Welcome to Fruity Knitting. This is episode 54. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Andrea.
We are back in our Offenbach studio for this episode, and we have put together a great program. Our feature interview guests are Jessica and Casey Forbes, and they are the founders of Ravelry.
Back in 2005, Jessica was very involved with the online knitting blogging community, and she was feeling very frustrated at not being able to keep track of the detailed information that bloggers were sharing about their knitting projects. So her husband Casey put his computer science brain to this problem, and the result was the launch of Ravelry in 2007. And Ravelry now has over 6 million users. It's still a private company with Casey and Jessica at the helm, and they've got 3 employees. But inside 10 years, it has totally changed the industry, turned it on its head, because it's now allowing many small independent producers to really flourish. So it's fantastic to be able to have a conversation with the couple who made this happen and to hear the story.
Yep. You will also get to meet German independent designer Katrin Schneider in Knitters of the World. We have extreme knitting and new releases.
Yeah.
Our daughter Madeline will be joining us to give an update on her project, and we also both have finished objects to show. So let's start with Bring and Brag.
With me. Many of you will recognise this as the Zweig by Caitlin Hunter, very popular design. Mine has been minimally modified. I'm very, very happy with it. The yarn that I used on the body and the sleeves is a 4-ply merino superwash and nylon blend by the hand dyer, the UK hand dyer, Eden Cottage Yarns. I think it's a beautiful yarn. I love the colour. It's sort of like a smoky light teal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the yarn that I used on the yoke is a Norwegian brand. It's Sandnesgarn, and it's an alpaca silk blend. Yeah.
Yep.
And I love the colour of this. To me, it just looks like antique gold.
The colours are totally beautiful on you, dolls.
Thank you.
I think they suit you really well.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the colours together.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the most significant modification that I made on this was just changing the gauge. The patterns gauge is 24 stitches for 10 centimetres, and I like to knit a 4-ply yarn closer to 28 stitches to 10 centimetres. The pattern also has around 5 to 10 centimetres positive ease, and I knew that I wanted mine to be more fitted. So instead of taking the normal size, which would be small for me, I went up and took the medium size and I knitted it at my gauge of 28 stitches, and I ended up with a garment that had around 2 centimetres negative ease, and the negative ease just gave me this fitted garment here. So that's how I did it. Now, if you're new to modifications, just let me point out that it doesn't normally work. If you're wanting to take a pattern and knit it at a tighter gauge, it doesn't normally work simply to take a larger size and knit it at a tighter gauge, because the row gauge is also really important. The row gauge gives you length, and you have to make sure that it's going to fit you. For example, from the shoulder, top of the shoulders to the underarm, and that's the length which is in the row gauge. Mine did happen to work out for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, Caitlin has put lace on the shoulders, on the yokes, and that's a great place to put lace, because lace wants to be stretched out, and this is where you are naturally stretched out with your shoulders and where you have movement. So that helped there. Also, my yarn is alpaca, and alpaca does tend to stretch more, so that was a good place to put alpaca yarn. If it didn't work out and I did need it to be a deeper yoke, I would just simply knit a few more extra rows before dividing the sleeves and the body. So it's not too difficult to do. What else? The yarn that I used on the yoke, I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, is actually thinner than the yarn on the main body, and that didn't cause a problem for the lace. In fact, I liked the result. It meant that the lace is slightly more see-through and gives it a more delicate look, but it did cause a problem on the stranded knitting. The stranded knitting is the bars down the bottom of the lace and the triangles at the top, and it was just looking really messy. So I decided to hold the yellow yarn double on the stranded sections, so the triangles and the bars, not the blue, just the yellow, and that did 2 really good things. It made the yellow pop out more, which is what I wanted, made it look more dominant.
In the colour work.
Yeah, in the colour work. and it made the stranded section gauge to be bigger, which meant that I didn't have to go up a needle size, because normally you do have to go up a needle size on stranded knitting parts if you've got a garment that's got normal knitting and then stranded. Because stranded has got less elasticity, it's better to go up a needle size so it's got more of a similar fabric texture as the other knitting.
Yep.
So it sort of solved that problem as well, and that worked out really well. The other thing I did was do 2 rows of the gold colour at the end of my cuffs, and that kind of mirrored the 2-row stripe here of the gold and up here, and I think that looks good, Andrew.
Yes. I'm sorry, I've made a mistake and I have to have a look a little closer.
Okay, well, just look at this first of all. Do you like the stripes?
I'm looking at you. The stripes are good, yes.
You do?
On
cool.
the end, yes. Matches the other stripes here and here.
Yes. So I'm very happy. I love the design. It's really, for me, nothing can be too excessively ornamented. I'm sure in a previous life I lived in the Baroque era, because the more ornamentation there is, the better for me. It's just my natural aesthetic.
That's right. Should I do something about that, darling? Should I start ornamenting myself?
Possibly.
All right.
Possibly. But so what I really love is that Caitlin decided not to leave the sleeves and the body plain, but put this texture in all over. So that's great.
Yeah. It's a good sort of, maybe subtle is a bit too strong a word, but it's a nice, gentle pattern over the body and the sleeves.
I think it works at a beautiful balance.
Yep.
I think it's a beautiful design, and that's one of the reasons why it's so popular.
Yeah. The other part that I really love is this here, the combined lace and twisted stitches. I think that's really very elegant and looks great.
So this is my finished project. What's your finished project?
Yes, I do have a finished object to show you. It's not quite as polished as Andrea's, but here it is. This is the finished back of my vest, which is also looking splendid. Very good knitting here. We have decided to go with the Martin Story design, which is called Welk. So I'm hoping that will be smooth sailing and I'll get this completed without any further drama. I'm using the yarn Donna Smith's Langsund, which is 100% Shetland wool made from her very own flock of sheep on the island of Burra in Shetland. We did meet Donna and her sheep, which was really fun. I think it's a really great yarn for the design because it's kind of a light shade and it really shows up the ridges in this little wandering rib, 3x3 rib that we're doing. So it shows up that stitch pattern really well, and I think it's going to be a really nice garment to wear. So, like I said, I'm really excited about having it completed.
Yeah.
One thing that has happened is Andrea gave me a little bit of a tutorial on my knitting technique, and so to try and get it a little bit quicker and also to look at the ergonomics of my knitting, because I think I was holding everything a little bit too tight and it was all a bit too many movements. So we did that. I think it's good, but I do think my knitting has got a little bit looser. So you say you measured the gauge. I'm a little bit concerned about the gauge on this pet. This is the front, which I've started now. So I think the gauge is probably a little bit out here.
Yeah, it's loose down here.
Yeah.
So you have to go back to knitting a little bit tighter and make sure that when you're changing from knit to purl and purl to knit, that you just make sure that's not sloppy.
Yeah, so I need to watch that. I'm not going to rip it back at this stage. I think I'll be able to get it under control, but we will have to.
That's a nice little pocket for a tummy.
No, that's not the plan. That's not the solution to this problem that I've got in mind. We'll keep an eye on it and see what happens.
I have to jump in here. It's very neat knitting. If you can have a look at this close up, he might be slow, but he's very neat.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to wearing it. And it's going to be a vest, so it'll be good for a bit of German summer evenings. We have got a picture of what I'm going to look like when it's finished. So nice broad shoulders, really rugged look. You notice there's also a bit of a pout there. I'm not sure that I'm going to take that on.
You'll have to practice that.
This is the result that you're after. This is what you're expecting.
Well, not the pout, but the broad shoulders and the rugged look and maybe a little bit of stubble.
Yeah, I know. I looked in the pattern. I was trying to find out where I have to stop shaving to get that all together.
Well, at your rate, don't stop shaving too soon or you'll be a hipster with a beard.
Be a bit too, yeah. Might be a bit scraggly.
I think it's going to look stunning with you. I don't think you have to do much. This is the back, so it's not meant to fit him around the neck, but just to let you see what it's going to look like. I think you're going to look fantastic in it.
Yep, it's going to be
gonna
great.
Look really good. So well done.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Coming up now is our interview with Jessica and Casey Forbes, who are the founders of Ravelry. We met Jessica at Edinburgh Yarn Festival earlier this year, which was really great. Jessica is lovely, so this is going to be a fun interview to watch. The interview is slightly longer than we normally have, so we've decided to split it into 2 parts. So here's part 1. After that, we'll be back and Madeline will be joining us.
Yes. Welcome to the Fruity Knitting Podcast. Can you remember how you first heard about Ravelry? Did someone tell you about it or did you just stumble on it? For me, I can't even remember, but it now seems unthinkable to be a serious knitter and live without the resources that Ravelry provides. Ravelry has turned the industry on its head, giving designers, yarn producers and dyers open access to a huge market of knitters. And all this has happened inside of 10 years. Jessica and Casey Forbes launched Ravelry in 2007. It grew extremely rapidly and it now has over 6 million users, and they continue to run it with just a few employees. I'm sure that many of you are really interested and excited to meet Jessica and Casey, and we're super happy and grateful to have them on the show. So welcome, Casey and Jessica. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
So I'd like to start by showing the viewers a blog post, Jessica, that you wrote back in April 2005. I'm going to stick it up on the screen and read it out. You said, Casey has been very excited about this idea he had last night. It's so cute. And then you go on and you explain the idea. And looking back, your combined skill set as a couple, I think, is a match made in heaven. So can we just start there and talk about the origin of the idea and how your skill sets came together?
Sure. So I started knitting when I was commuting on a train for about 30 minutes, and I really needed something to kind of keep me inspired and excited. And, I was sitting in front of a computer all day. And so I started knitting, and I didn't really know anyone in real life who knit. So I decided that I was going to start a knitting blog. And at that time, blogs were super popular for many different topics. But I found this incredible community online of knitters and crocheters and crafters. And I connected with people who were all over the world, who were all over the States. And it was so exciting because it was something I was super passionate about. But I didn't, like I said, I didn't know anyone in real life. So we would kind of connect with each other online, and we would talk to each other about, what we wanted to knit, what patterns had come out, things that we had done to those patterns to make them fit our bodies, or what yarn and pattern combinations we made, a lot of the stuff that we do now, except the only place we had to talk about that was on your own individual blog. And also there were lots of message boards, but I found that a little kind of overwhelming. And so I just kind of connected with people there. And at the same time, though, I found it kind of frustrating when I wanted to do a pattern. I would have to kind of go back into, maybe I had bookmarked a pattern modification someone had made. Maybe they made the ribbing longer, or something that would fit a long torso, which I have. And so after hearing me kind of get frustrated over the course of a couple of years of trying to find, a certain pattern that I couldn't remember what it was, but I had remembered had a cable or something like that, Casey had the idea of doing something with this information to make it easier to find.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it seemed like everyone that was blogging at least knew already that it was this big missing piece. Everyone who was taking the time to share their stuff on their blogs was putting so much time into photos and describing the process or just like, taking the time to write a blog post, which today, seems like a big undertaking, but there's so many people were doing it then. It seemed like we all knew that there was a missing piece, which was something to connect everyone's, information they were sharing together. And, I don't know, at just one point we're like, we could make that, we don't have to just complain about it. It's something we could make.
Yeah, so the first idea was just to combine everyone's blog posts and kind of unite them under an entry in a database so that you could look at a pattern and see who has made it. So it would kind of connect everyone's blogs in a database.
And you had the skill set, Casey, because you were a programmer. And I imagine probably a little bit geeky and were excited about going into these new languages or learning new languages that these platforms were using.
Yeah, it was definitely, perfect thing for me. And my job at the time was, just a job. It was not, something I really thought much about after I got home from work. So yeah, the idea of having like a fun project to work on was really, I was looking for something. So
yeah, so there was actually 2 years, though, between when we had the idea initially, when I wrote that blog post, that was in 2005, and then 2 years passed because we had actually busy jobs, we got married, we had, a lot of more stuff going on. But then in 2007, we decided that we would start working on it again. We got kind of a nudge from a friend of ours who we call her our muse, Kelly Sue DeConnick, who she's kind of inspired a lot of people to do really cool projects, but she kind of nudged us at the end of 2006 and was like, what are you guys doing with that awesome idea you had? I think you should still do it. And so Casey and I, I had actually quit my job by that point and was taking classes to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I was thinking I wanted to go back to grad school and get a master's degree. And I was kind of, excitedly playing around with different ideas. And Casey had, like he said, he had a job that wasn't as busy. So it was something that we felt like we could take on.
Okay, so that was in January 2007. Then you decided, okay, you're going to take the idea really seriously and work on it. So how did things progress then over the next 3 to 4 months?
Well, I spent a lot of time writing emails to people. Like, I had a lot of contacts within the community just from friends that I had on my blog. And so I kind of invited friends and friends of friends to come in and take a look at what we were doing. We were working so hard to get it to be something that we thought would be fun to use. But, it was an idea that I thought that I would use as kind of like a type A. I had lots of binders before this where I would keep track of everything that I was doing. And so I knew I would be interested in it, but I didn't really know if other people would want to keep track of that level of detail for their projects, or even if designers or yarn dyers and spinners would want to come in and keep track of the things that they were doing for their work as well. So I just kind of sent these enthusiastic emails to people. And at that time, people had just started really using Facebook. It had left Harvard and people were starting to get a little bit more comfortable with sharing information about themselves. And the blogging community that we were a part of definitely was comfortable with that, putting their names or putting their face on a website. But a lot of people who were like the friends of friends were kind of like not sure about it. So I was trying to kind of share our enthusiasm for this idea. And really we wanted to kind of enhance the community that was already there and just make it more accessible to people so that you could find the information that you wanted to find in a quicker way. But it wasn't really a business per se. We just had this fire in us to see if it would work, and we loved working together. And
it wasn't a business idea. It wasn't like we were thinking that it was going to turn into a business. It was just something we felt like we really wanted to do.
Yeah, we were kind of naive, I think, in a lot of ways. We didn't, we thought maybe if we got 1,000 people to use it, it would be pretty cool. And then we would have a lot of patterns on there and you could see what other people were doing. But by, April into May, we kind of had the idea that it was a good idea and people were really interested in what we were doing. Our friends were really enthusiastic and gave us a lot of good ideas about how to, organize it. And we had librarian friends and stuff like that who were looking at it. But at the beginning of May, it was Maryland Sheep and Wool. And we kind of had that in our head as like a fun way to like maybe like a soft launch of the site, like to tell more people about it. Because everyone we had up to that point, we had said, please don't tell anybody about it because we just don't have any resources behind it. It was just like what we could put on our credit card.
Well, and from January, like I think within a month, we had something that people could sign into and use, even though it was not even, it was a fraction of it was finished, but it was finished enough that people could log in and they could share a project. So, we had 100 people, I think, within a month, and then we had a few hundred after that. And we were, everyone had to keep it a secret because it was very much not done. We didn't even know where we were going with it or what was happening with it. And so that...
And were you worried about it crashing if you just had an avalanche of people suddenly coming in?
we didn't have the capacity to add a whole bunch of people. But the main thing we didn't have is it wasn't in a state where a lot of people could use it.
But we kind of got, it grew pretty fast. Like we said, we were working so many hours a day on it and getting not very much sleep. But by May, I made up little buttons and I went to Maryland and, we all kind of hung out on the hill there and I walked around and gave out buttons and told people about this idea that we had and, if they wanted to check it out, come to Ravelry.com. And that afternoon, I told Casey, I was like, listen, people seem really into it. I think we need to set up a waiting list because I don't think we can invite this many people in right off the bat. And by that, I think the next day or through that weekend, we had like 6,000 people sign up for this waiting list that we had just set up. So it was pretty, we were so excited, but kind of overwhelmed at the same time. And at that same weekend, we told people who were using it that they could talk about it on their blogs. So that included, some pretty popular bloggers at the time, including the Yarn Harlot. And you know how that happens if the Yarn Harlot talks about something, it turns into a phenomenon overnight. So that kind of happened over the next few months. It grew so quickly that we had, I think at one time we had over 30,000 people on the waiting list to get in.
And we were letting people in slowly just so people would see that there was some activity, we weren't really ready for anyone at that point or for very many people. And we were just all right, letting more people in because people were getting antsy about it and, people didn't understand why they had to wait. It was kind of alien, I think, to a lot of people at the time. Back then, Gmail had done an invite thing to get to launch Gmail, and that was really
they said it was in beta. So, it made people, we were lucky that that happened at the same time because we said we were in beta too. And then, people were kind of used to waiting for Gmail or waiting for this. And it was hard to, know that people wanted to use it, but we didn't have the infrastructure there yet to kind of be able to handle that many people. Okay,
so after Maryland then, there was no doubt that this idea of yours was going to succeed with 30,000 people on a waiting list. So that would have really changed things. From that point onwards, you must have started to think, okay, we've got to be quite serious about building this site because everybody is loving it and wanting it. What were the next set of hurdles that you had to get over in the next 6 to 12 months? And what were your first ideas about financing the site?
So in that early time, when we first announced it to everyone and we had the waiting list cranking, I was in there every day talking with people in the forums and making major changes to the site. So we would take a new direction on a different day, or we would add a whole section. 1 week would pass and major things would change. And so that was really fun. And there was so much work to do that, we weren't really thinking about how we were going to fund this at all. This went on, we worked like this for months where we were just so focused on getting all our ideas out there so people could see them. And instead of just seeing, a part of what we were trying to do, we wanted to get to a place where people could really see everything that we wanted to do. And so we kept pushing off, how are we going to pay for this? We knew we wanted it to be free, So I guess we must have known early that it was probably going to be advertising.
In some way.
But we really didn't think about that. I don't know. It seems ridiculous now because we didn't have any money coming in and we did need to pay for it. But it was just like, it was so exciting to be building it and have everyone trying it. And every day would get, it was like the feedback loop was really motivating.
And I think, until June of that year of 2017, Casey had a full-time job still. So we had that kind of going for us until June. And then, after Maryland and the waiting list kind of ramped up, we said, okay, so we need to work on this if we're going to make it happen. If it's going to be something that really works, we need to work on it full-time, both of us.
It was just, it was like absorbing our lives. I think the conversation was something like, we either have to stop doing this.
Yeah, give up.
Turn it off.
Or we need to put more time into it.
So we decided to put all our time into it.
And we were lucky, though, because the time that we built it was 2007. And, the economy was in a very different place than it is now. And Casey had a good, skill set. We felt pretty confident that if we worked on it for the summer and maybe it didn't work out in the fall, he could get a different job and I could get a different job and we could kind of move on from there. So we had enough money to last through the summer.
And I remember thinking like the worst case scenario would be that we'd have to move in with my mom, we had, a lot to fall back on because it was just the two of us. We had no kids. We didn't really have any,
we didn't have any debt, really. We had been pretty responsible.
So I do remember thinking what's the worst that could happen? I would just have to, ask my mom if we could stay with her for a while.
You did end up doing something like T-shirts so how did that happen? What happened there?
We were supposed to, or we had, decided that we were going to spend the summer on it. And if it was not making money by the end of the summer, that we would go back to, then it wasn't working. We'd have to get our jobs and, get new jobs and everything like that. And, but by the time we got to, that deadline that we had invented, there was no way we were going to stop working on the Ravelry because it was like, had even more momentum then. And we were really, we were even more invested in it and we were having even more fun than we were at the beginning. And there was like no way, I don't even remember pausing to be like, okay, so we hit our imaginary deadline and we're still not making money. We just kept going. And,
so I had a friend who did kind of illustration as a hobby. And so I asked her if she would do up a few designs for T-shirts. And I found kind of a local business who could print them up. And we just decided we would sell T-shirts just to get us to the point where we could think about setting up advertising. And people kind of supported us. They really wanted to help us keep going, which was so exciting. And so we sold, I think, 3,000 T-shirts and we had them in our 850 square foot apartment in Boston. And we had boxes from the floor to the ceiling. My upstairs neighbor was a very kind woman and didn't care that we had them in the landing. And our friends and family would come over after work on weekends and help us fulfill orders. We were going to the main post office in Boston after we got kicked out of our local post office.
Yeah, they're like, please stop bringing shirts.
Yeah, and filling up our tiny Toyota Corolla with T-shirts. It was just crazy. I give people so much credit who do physical sales. It was kind of a nightmare, but it was kind of amazing at the same time. It definitely got us to the next point.
Yeah.
So we were able to keep going and working on Ravelry, but I will never sell T-shirts out of my house again. We learned a lot from that.
But then there was a fundraising that somebody set up too. What was that?
Yeah, so over the course of those few months, we sold the T-shirts and then we started buying kind of our own servers because we had been renting until that point and the site was getting much bigger and Casey looked at the cost of things and said, this is just not going to be feasible for us going forward. We need to have our own infrastructure. Like I said, we had kind of a low interest credit card that we were just putting this stuff on and buying a server and then inviting a few more people and figuring out, tweaking things behind the scenes and then inviting a few more people. So, we were kind of at our limit with how much we could afford to do. And then a wonderful woman named Julie Frick, and the 10 Lousy Bucks group on Ravelry came together, and they decided that they would do what they called a Ravel Raiser. And they worked with so many businesses in our community to kind of put together these amazing gift packs, and people, you know, put in so much money. I think that we raised $70,000, but they raised $70,000 for us.
They were trying to, I mean, we didn't even know that they were planning this. And then Julie came to me, I think, and said, you know, we're doing this fundraiser, and, you know, is there something that you need that we can, you know, we can say that we're raising the money for? And I was like, absolutely. Like, we definitely need equipment. Like, we need a server. Like, so they had a goal, I think, of $10,000, which would have been amazing. And then, yeah, they totally blew past that and raised $70,000, which, you know,
this was way before anything like Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like Julie Frick and the 10 Lousy Bucks group and all of them, they were our Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't have made it. Like, I don't think Ravelry would have existed today without that.
No, we actually, I mean, we were in kind of denial, I think, about how much money we had borrowed to, you know, at this point we'd been working on Ravelry full-time for 10 months, and, you know, without much income coming in. And when we looked at all our bills, and we were like, wow, we can use all this money that people raised, because we're that far behind.
Well, look, let's just go back, because there's another area too that I want to quickly talk about. It was very interesting because you were actually writing in information yourself, Jessica, just going through magazines and writing in a whole lot of data. Then you suddenly got help from librarians. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was another part of kind of our growing pains, not only the financial stuff, but we, you know, at the very beginning of Ravelry, I was getting my magazines in the mail, and I would sit down and just start entering all of the patterns in myself. But obviously that became quickly something that overwhelmed me, and I couldn't keep up with the amount of patterns that were coming in, the interest in people wanting to add their projects, and then they couldn't find a pattern in there. So we just decided that what we needed to do was set up a way for the community to help us add information in. And luckily, at that time, there was a lot about community-supported content, like Wikipedia. And we just decided that we could not own all of this information ourselves. It was just too much for us to do. And we really wanted to bring the community in to help us do it together. So, you know, when I was sending information to dyers and designers, I would say, please come in and look at what we have for you and update the information. If you have a new yarn coming in, please feel free to add it in. And librarians, like you said, were coming in and looking at how we organize the database, and kind of were sending us, oh, if you tweak it like this, like down the line, this will make it easier for you. You know, things that we don't have expertise in. And it really made the database what it turned into, because we had so many people who were enthusiastic about it and had expertise in this field.
I mean, at the beginning, we were, you know, our thinking was, oh, this is going to be, you know, the most common patterns and the most common yarns. And, you know, as soon as we had a couple dozen people trying to set out, they were like, no, that's not what we want to do. We want to have
all of them.
It needs to be everything. And so when we set out to, you know, make it into a more of like community editable project, it was one of those points where we're like, I think we're maybe trying to do too much, but then we went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah, the only way that it worked was because everyone came together and contributed. We all built it together.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. I think it's really interesting that we've all now just come to expect Ravelry to be there whenever we want to use it. But even though it had early popularity, it wasn't necessarily sure that it was going to survive. So it's really great to remember the early contributors like the librarians who came in with their expertise, like how to organise data to really help, and then the fundraisers.
Yeah, that's right. That got them through those tough times.
Yeah.
In the second part of the interview, Casey and Jessica talk about the challenges that they faced as the Ravelry community grew even further.
Yeah.
And in the interview, I think you do get to hear that really their personalities were critical in making Ravelry what it is today.
Yeah.
So that's coming up later in the show.
That is, but Dales, you actually have to make some space because it's Madeline's turn.
I have to get out of here. Okay.
So welcome, Madeline. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank
Madeline's
you.
been doing lots of knitting, so give us an update on your project.
Yeah, so I'm still knitting Audrey and Unst by Gudrun Johnston, and I actually showed it to you 2 episodes ago. It's a very easy knit. As you can see, there's a lot of stocking stitch here, but there are some new techniques that I've learned as well. Now, the construction is you knit the front and the back in one piece up to the armholes, and then you divide and put some stitches under the arms on spare thread and knit the 2 front sections and the back separately. The front bodice has some simple lace at the
I'll
top.
hold it for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the lace was fairly simple and easy, which was nice because I'd never done lace before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
looks good.
And also you were saying the wool suits it very well.
Yeah, the wool does suit it well. It's quite a warm wool. It's a thick rustic wool, and I think the lace pattern is quite a solid lace pattern, so I think it's not very delicate, so it works well.
Yeah. The pattern says to do a bias bind off around the neckline as well, but I did not do that. And it also says to do a 3/4 length sleeves, but I'm deciding to do full length sleeves because that way I can wear it all through winter.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this wool is very thick and warm and it's not suitable for a summer cardigan anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to do full length sleeves, and what are you going to do with the neck?
Well, because of that, I also want to have a higher neckline. And so we've decided to add a twisted rib neckline.
Which will match really well.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Cool. So you've been actually, even though it's stocking stitch, you've been learning some new techniques. So you've done lace for the first time. What else have you done for the first time?
Well, then came the 3-needle bind off to join the shoulder seams, and that was quite fun.
Yeah.
It was only very short, but I think it looks very neat and it's quick and easy to do.
It does, and it's satisfying too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is satisfying. And after that, I had to pick up the stitches around the armholes and knit the sleeve downwards. Mum, you showed me how to pick up the stitches by doing one half of the armhole, then I did the other, and then I continued knitting the sleeve cap using German short rows.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot. You've picked up stitches, you've done German short rows, you've done 3-needle bind off, you've done lace.
Yeah.
So you're getting pretty motivated. It's a simple cardigan to knit, but you get to use these different skills.
Yeah.
So well done.
Thank you.
You're improving your knitting.
Yes, I've got a special motivation behind that because I'm really desperately wanting Mum to knit me King Henry VIII by Alice Starmore, or give me hers, but she refuses to do either so far.
Yes.
And instead, Mum, you say I need to knit it myself.
That's true, I do.
I do not have the skills yet, but with every garment, I'm
You're
deciding
building
that,
up. Yeah,
learn
that's
new
cool.
skills.
I don't like to knit the same garment twice, and it is a stunning design, but I don't want to give her mine. So I say, if you want it, then knit it.
Yes.
But you'll get there. It's actually, you've got to do some fair isle next, and then you'll get there in no time.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to show was back when we were back in the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, I actually bought some ribbons and buttons at the Vendor Textile Garden. It's a really gorgeous shop there. And I thought what we might do, we can discuss it, see if you're interested, is do a typical Kate Davies thing, which is to put some pretty ribbon on the inside of the button band like this. So on the outside you wouldn't see it when it's closed up, but then if the button band is open and it sort of swings open with the wind, you see this flash of gorgeous colour on the inside. So we've got this ribbon. You like this one the best, I think, don't you? Yeah.
I like the idea. It's a good idea.
It's just a pretty flower motive. I like this one actually, which is a more geometrical design, and it's lighter.
It's more of a groovy one.
But that's kind of pretty too.
Yeah.
Or We could go for a neutral one, which is this beige one, which is also very pretty. It's got
Little birds and flowers on them.
that's it.
Isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
right.
It is
There.
nice, but I think I like the ones that pop out more.
Yeah, but it's a cute design idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for showing us the update.
No worries.
So coming up now, you're going to meet the lovely Katrin Schneider, who is a German designer in Knitters of the World.
Hello, my name is Katrin Schneider and I'm knitwear designer. I'm also still working as an IT consultant and I have a wonderful 10 years old daughter. I learned knitting at school, but I didn't really start knitting until 6 or 7 years ago. For a long time I knitted designs from magazines without making any adjustments for my size, and the result was very bad. It didn't fit me and I didn't like it and I never wore it. Very late, it was 2014, I discovered Ravelry, and that took me to another world of knitting. I bought my first hand-dyed yarn, Macintosh, and I knitted a cardigan top-down seamlessly, and it was perfect for me. It fits me perfectly, and it still looks amazing in that beautiful yarn, and I was really, really happy. Then I realized that designers were looking for testers for their patterns, and after many tests I tried to design my first own pattern. It is a very simple cardigan that allows countless color combinations, and the name is Coloring, and it was so successful that it encouraged me to continue designing, and now there are 22 patterns in my Ravelry store and 2 are currently being tested. My style is puristic, and it is always important to me that my designs are wearable. So my first goal is with every design that I want to wear it myself. Avion is a sporty button cardigan with hidden pockets, designed for the lovely soft woolen yarn Polo & Co. Feltin. I wanted to design a kind of aviator jacket, and I thought that this yarn would provide the perfect fabric for it. The cardigan is worked from the top down with saddle shoulders. The fronts are knitted in half brioche stitch, and the sleeves and the back are knitted in stockinette stitch. The yarn is fingering weight yarn with 400 meters per 100 gram. It is a French yarn composed of 100% merino spread in France. It's dyed with dye plans or with dyes without any heavy metals and acids. I wore this cardigan many days. It's one of my favorite cardigans for fall and spring, I think. Every fall I need a new garment made of a yarn from De Rerum Natura. My fourth design for that yarn is Kimono. It is a cozy, oversized coat designed for the wonderful woolen yarn Gilead. I wanted to design a jacket that can be worn outside and also over other knitted garments. And the coat is worked from the top down with raglan increases, and sleeves in kimono style, and the fronts with integrated button and buttonhole bands worked overlapping, and I also added some deep pockets. I really like this coat, and I wore it, I think, every day last winter. This is my second collaboration with Nature's Luxury. Danica, the owner of Nature's Luxury, sent me this yarn, La Parisienne, and I knew immediately it would be perfect for a drapey summer top. La Parisienne is very soft and light, and the special spinning characteristics gives the garment a beautiful stitch definition and a very smooth look. The construction of the top is very easy. It is worked in the round from the top, and shoulder increases and short flows at the neckline are shaping the yoke, and after joining back and front under the armhole, decreases are worked to the hem. I think it is a very mindless knit with a beautiful result. This design is one of my favorites I've ever made, and I can't wait to wear it this spring and summer again. The Winterfell cardigan is designed for the new base La Bien-Aimée Merino Sport. I mean, the owner of La Bien-Aimée asked me to design an easy-to-wear cardigan that goes with a pair of jeans or a skirt or a tunic. And I didn't want to make it too romantic, and I really like geometric patterns. So I tried to add diagonal lines to the front. The pattern, it looks very easy, and it is easy to knit, but it was difficult to write the instructions for it. Sometimes it is easier to say what you have to do than to write it down. But I think I could manage it. I'm a big fan of Aimé's colors. They are all gorgeous. I really love all of them. This one is Winterfell, and it gives the pattern its name. The Miles summer shirt is designed for my favorite local yarn store, the Miles in Hamburg. Ima, the owner of the store, asked me for a design knitted in Ito yarn, and so I wanted to design a shirt for summer. The shirt shows two different sides. It appears cool and clear from the front, and the back looks more romantic with a button and the lace. The shirt is worked from the top down seamlessly. You only have to sew on the button. The pattern offers two possibilities: a sleeveless version for hot summer days, and longer sleeves for cooler days, or for those who doesn't like to wear sleeveless tops. It is knitted in Ito Kino, 100% silk noil yarn, also called as organic or recycled silk. As it is produced from leftovers of spun silk. I really love the special feel of that yarn. It is soft and it is very light in contrast to other silk yarns. This shirt only weighs 100 grams. Thank you for having me, Andrea and Andrew.
When we were at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, we were interviewing Amy, the owner of La Bien-Aimée Yarns, and she showed us a design that had just been released to show off her new colourway, Winterfell. And it was Katrin Schneider's lovely cardigan. And I'd never heard of Katrin Schneider as a designer before, so that was funny. Yeah.
That was interesting because I remember seeing that design there, and I really liked it. And a week later, we were actually in Cologne at the H&H Trade Fair, and we got to meet Katrin Schneider in person, which was fun. She's a really lovely person, and she actually lives just at the edge of the Odenwald, which is down where we often go walking. So it's not far from us, and you've seen it on the show.
A lot of our footage of extreme knitting is there. The Odenwald.
Yep. So.
And Katrin has very wearable and elegant designs, and she's offering our patrons a 25% discount on all her patterns in her Ravelry store. And we were really excited when she offered this because we think her designs have a very wide-ranging appeal. I particularly like the kimono coat. I think it looks like an Audrey Hepburn kind of coat.
Yep.
And I could really imagine knitting it in a bright orange or a lime green.
That sounds pretty stunning.
Yeah. I'm starting a couple of designs now from one of my all-time favourite designers, and that's Kim Hargraves. She's a UK-based designer. Kim Hargraves was the head designer of Rowan about 15 years ago, so well before Marie Wallen was the head designer. And Kim Hargraves' mother, Kathleen Hargraves, was also a knitwear designer and very well known, more possibly in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
So she comes from a good heritage of designing knitwear.
Yep.
I love Kim Hargraves' designs. She puts out about 2 collections a year, and she still designs with Rowan Yarns, and they support the publishing of her books. And I've bought her latest collection, which is called Calm. I really don't think you can go wrong with Kim Hargraves' designs. She mainly designs for an inexperienced or an intermediate knitter, and what I love is that you can be a relatively new knitter and you knit up one of her designs and it'll look like you've just bought something from a high-end boutique. Even if it's a simple design, she's just incredible that way. She just creates the most classiest patterns, and I think it's to do with the really small details. Like she'll just change a neckline to be just slightly different so it just looks gorgeous, or some of her edgings, are just beautiful. So I love that about her. She mainly designs bottom up in pieces, so it has to be seamed. But if you prefer to do seamless and top down, don't let that put you off if you find one of her designs that you really love, because I think she's well worth trying. If you haven't tried her, she's fantastic.
I know. I must say, you've been recommending Kim Hargraves to people for many years.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, well before I was on Ravelry.
Yeah.
She was one of my favourite designers. Yeah, okay, so the designs that I've picked out, first of all in this one, I'm going to do 2 designs. The first one is a super simple summer singlet top. Here's a picture of it. It's done in the Kid Silk Haze. I'm doing mine in this sort of lovely burnt orangey yellow colour. And it's just got a deep V, which you can use. It's reversible, so you can have the deep V at the front or at the back. I think I'll have mine at the back because I don't have a cleavage. But you can also wear it over a shirt. So that's just very, very simple. And that's the colour that I'm knitting it in. And I must be in an orange phase at the moment because the other design that I'm knitting is also in orange. Here it is here. And I'm using the Rowan Soft Yak for this design, and that's a cotton and yak blend. And this design is from the book. It's a very cropped, fitted, cabled jacket. It's very cute. It's totally me. So here's a picture of it. What I like about Kim is that I pretty well get her gauge immediately. So I don't think I'll actually be doing any modifications on this. Everything about the pattern suits me for how I want it, for my body shape. So I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward knit. What I really love is that she's got the shaping, the waist shaping is actually done between the cables, as you can see there on the front. So, and I just love the way that it sits like a little bolero jacket, almost like in the waist,
very
like
cute,
that.
yeah.
It's gorgeous. The other thing that I love about her is how she's used the garter stitch. This is the back piece. It starts with the rib. And if anybody said to me, what is the knit stitch that you least like the look of? I would say garter stitch. It's really not my favourite. But I love the way she's used it. So this yarn is a DK weight yarn. It's quite a thick DK, but nevertheless, she's done I think it's about 7 rows of garter stitch to start off with. And she's done that on a needle size of 2.75. And that just gives it a really delicate structure and look. And then you go into the 2x2 rib. I love that look of it, how she's used it. So it's these little details about her designs that always excite me and I think are really clever.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short walk now. We're going out for a little bit of extreme knitting. We're actually going to the Black Forest, so the very famous Black Forest in Germany, really beautiful forest. Our faithful hound Jack is not with us today. He was at home looking after Madeline, so it's just us. After that, we'll be back with some really cool sock designs in new releases.
My name is Lisa Ross, though you may know me better online as Paper Daisy Creations. I'm really excited to be here today to introduce my latest sock collection, the Socks of Wonderland. This 4-piece collection includes 2 toe-up designs and 2 top-down designs, and all of them have a variety of techniques in them that are going to keep you on your toes. The very first design I have is called Impossibly Possible. Now this design looks like stranded color work, but it's actually much simpler than that. You only work one color at a time, but slip stitches strategically to create this beautiful mosaic effect as you work your way up the sock. Now this design can be done in as few as 2 colors, but it can also be done in as many colors as you'd like. I chose to use the Leading Men Fiber Arts Gradient Mini Skeins to create this beautiful ombre effect as it works its way up. But there are lots of inspirational ideas if you check out the project pages on Ravelry. The next design I have is called Curious, and it is a toe-up sock featuring the colorway Sea Breeze by Tanis Fiber Arts. Curious, just like Alice herself, and the blue is a nod to Alice's blue dress. This uses twisted ribbing that begins right here at the toe and works its way up the sock using some lace within the ribbing to give you this very curious effect along the instep, and then it shifts and you have it along the leg of the sock. The third design I have is called Card Party, inspired, of course, by the Queen of Hearts and her deck of minions, though I really feel like these socks are perfect for any card lover in your life who is knit-worthy. So this design uses stranded color work to work the hearts and diamonds. You begin with a picot cast on, work your way down through the color work, and then you have a little bit of intarsia right there on the heel to work in the club on one sock and the spade on the other, so that the full deck of cards is represented in this design. To get this yarn, check out Hugh Loco. She has a kit that works perfectly for this design. Finally, I have the sock called Tweedletoes, which is of course inspired by Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I've created a fraternal pair of socks by using Fiber Nymph Dye Works Inversibles. This design will work with any type of yarn, solid, semi-solid, gradient, variegated, and it's a really approachable design for anyone who's new to sock knitting. You begin at the top, work your way down to a heel flap and gusset, and use simple patterning, increases and decreases to create this lovely rippled effect if you're using self-striping yarn, or a different effect depending on the yarn of your choice. So these are the 4 designs. I consider all of my sock designs to be adventurous beginner to intermediate. So if you have experience with sock knitting, or if you have experience with this technique within your chosen sock, I think you're going to be just fine. I include lots of helpful tips for getting the right fit, for trying anything new within the design. The charts presented in these 3 are also written in case charts just aren't your thing. The color work is only charted. This collection is an adventure within itself, and I really hope that you will join us on this sock knitting adventure. So thank you so much to Andrew and Andrea for having me on, and I hope you'll come and join me with the Socks of Wonderland.
They are really cool sock designs. I particularly like the Impossibly Possible. As Lisa said, they do make the impossible possible with this mosaic knitting. It looks like you're doing stranded color work, but actually you're only working one color at a time.
Yeah. Lisa has offered our patrons an amazing discount of 50% off all her patterns in her Ravelry store. Lisa has some amazing sock patterns in her store, and she's also got quite a few kids patterns, little cardigans and jumpers for both boys and girls, which you can see modelled by her very cute kids. Yep. She's also got a few adult garments there, so thank you, Lisa, so much for this very generous offer. Thank you to our wonderful patrons for continuing to support us financially. Because we are independent and we don't receive financial support from advertising or sponsorship, we are totally relying on growing our patron support to continue the show. We're always trying to find ways of improving the quality of the show, from the actual production to the content, and that requires more than a full-time commitment of our energy levels and our workload. So if you are appreciating the work we're putting into it, you're enjoying and valuing the show, then please support it by becoming a patron. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. It is now time for part 2 of our interview with Jessica and Casey, the Ravelry founders. They are totally lovely people, so this is a really great chance to get to know them a little bit better. Yeah. So enjoy this. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, bye.
Bye.
Ravelry has an amazing community. It's got a community now of over 6 million users, and it's such a friendly place to hang out. And that can be quite difficult to build and maintain a really great community. So from the start, did you have some kind of guiding philosophy, or what are the decisions and the challenges that you had to make or, deal with as you went along?
Well, I think because we built it the way that we did, it was, a lot of people helped us build it along the way. We kind of started with friends and friends of friends, and because it was kind of a small community, we kind of built a community culture as we went, and people felt invested in it, and they knew that we were very, very invested in it as well. So it was kind of like being in our living room and what we were hosting as a couple. So that kind of came over time, and I'm glad that you feel like it's welcoming and friendly, and that's kind of what we wanted it to be from the beginning.
At some point, but, it grew from, a group of people that knew each other or that, are friends of friends to, much bigger. And we did it was, that was a hard transition. We learned a lot of things the hard way, and, just transitioning from everyone was kind to each other, or everyone sort of enforced those community norms, to we needed strict rules and we needed to enforce them, consistently and clearly. The jump from the small to the big was something we sort of didn't quite.
We're a little innocent, I think, at times. We just kind of assume the best of people,
I think we put it off.
We kind of realized that at a certain point, we really needed to make the community guidelines and make rules for conduct on Ravelry. And when that became truly apparent was in Obama's first election. The whole country, in the same way that it is kind of right now, unfortunately, it was a divisive time in the United States. And at that point, it was a lot of Americans were on the site. And we kind of realized that we didn't want to host certain kinds of behavior in our virtual living room on Ravelry. We didn't want to be spending all of this hard work and time to make this website if people were not going to behave nicely to each other. And so we had to kind of make more rules as time went on. Basically, when people would break a rule that we kind of had in our head but never kind of made it public, we'd be like, no, we're not going to host that. We need to make a rule on that. And it kind of happened gradually over time.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people that, run the communities probably also learn things the hard way like we did.
But we had a lot of volunteers that were helping us as well. So that kind of, like we said at the beginning, kind of growing small, people started volunteering to moderate in the forums and in the groups, and they would kind of let us know if there was behavior going on the site that we would not want to host. And so there was, we couldn't have been everywhere. And so we really relied on the community, and still do, to find things that we don't want to host and things that are, against the rules that we put in place.
Yeah, it's much easier now because people don't take it personally if you have to tell them they've done something wrong, or even if they do, it's a lot different. It used to be that everyone knew everything that was going on everywhere. Even if there were, 10,000 people or 20,000 people, everyone seemed to know what was happening everywhere. It was almost too small. I feel like that I would never want to maintain a community of that weird in-between size, where it's big enough that there's problems everywhere, but it's small enough that everyone's in everyone's business.
Yeah, it's a little bit like living in a small village, isn't it?
Yeah, I do remember during that time.
Very similar.
I was still trying to build the site. There was so much work to do. There's still so much work to do. But I remember going to bed at night and thinking, what have we done? You know, like I felt like, you know, it created Frankenstein's monster because we couldn't shut it off, but it was overwhelming.
And I think that's when we built more tools for people to notify when things were going on. And we also, you know, like he said, we were still building the site. So we had to set up, we call it the list, and we set up ways for people to kind of contribute their ideas to the website, because we were getting inundated with emails and notes in the forums about things that they thought we could do to make the site better. And there were so many wonderful ideas that we incorporated, you know, over time into the site and still are. So we kind of made that. And we also had volunteers that were helping with emails before we were able to hire actual employees for the website. So there was so many people that kind of came together to help us through this growth period.
I'm catching on the growth at the moment because it is really difficult to maintain or manage the growth of a company. So talk a bit about when Ravelry grew to expand beyond the US. What was that like? Because that must have been amazing. And then just briefly mention, did you think about expanding into other crafts, for example, like sewing, because there is crossovers between knitters and sewers?
Well, for me, before I did Ravelry, I was a study abroad advisor. So for me, getting people to learn about the world and all the cultures of the world is something that I value and I think is so exciting. So when I would kind of watch Ravelry grow throughout the world and people come online from different countries, it would just give me a thrill to see the craft and how people incorporate their culture into their craft, and their, you know, where they live has such an impact on how they knit and crochet. And so I thought it was so exciting to see the site go beyond the United States. And we also, you know, through this time, as we said, the site was growing so much and people were contributing so many patterns and yarns to the database. It got to the point where it got really unwielding to kind of look for a pattern. If you looked for a cardigan, it would bring up like thousands of cardigans. And how were you going to figure out what you were actually looking for? So we decided that what we needed to do was add more search terms to the database. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, we just, you know, we had several years of ideas that, you know, it's never really a good time to like start collecting more information, because then you have to go back and fill in, you know, 100,000 patterns. I forget how many we had at the time, 150,000. So after like years of collecting all these ideas of things that we wanted to add to improve pattern database, we finally like did it as a big event, and we had people sponsored like prizes, and we, you know, had a big announcement. It was called Search Party, and for a 10-day period, anyone who wanted to helped update information on. I think we like matched people with patterns that they had used, and asked for help filling in all the information. So
and it was kind of a crazy idea. It was like we had this database and we were going to like triple the amount of information that could be added for each pattern. And it was, we knew we needed to have that information, but like, how do you get that started? So we kind of made it into a game, I guess. You know, it took, I think, was it like 10 days or something like that to like get, everyone was so
a lot
motivated.
Of 10 days. I think people ran out of things to do more quickly than that.
Yeah.
People were really into it.
It was pretty amazing to see everyone come together, and, you know, we, you know, tripled or quadrupled the amount of information for each pattern. So that is what makes the database and that advanced search as useful as it is today.
So just quickly, did you think of expanding into other crafts, or was that just going to be just too overwhelming?
We have added other crafts. So at the beginning, we just had knitting and crochet, and we've added spinning and weaving. So we've kind of decided that we wanted to focus on yarn crafts. And sewing, I think, is wonderful. I love to sew, but I think that it is a completely different craft with completely different tools and materials. So we would have to have, I think, a completely different website in order to really give it the attention that it deserves. And I think there's so much information already on Ravelry that I think it would be kind of overwhelming to add it to Ravelry as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's flattering that people think that we could pull it off or something, but I don't know that we could.
Okay, so are there any tips or features that you think more Ravelry users need to know about or use?
Well, I think for me as a knitter, it's the advanced search. I mean, I think if I'm using one thing on Ravelry the most, it would be that. And I really encourage everyone to kind of play around with it. You're not going to break it. All it is a filter for you to find information that you want to find. And I think some people get a little overwhelmed by all the fields, but I just find it so exciting to be able to look at that level of detail. Like, I think we all kind of know what we want to knit. Well, not everyone, but, if you want to try out a new shoulder shaping or something like that, you can look for that information in Ravelry, which I find super fun. And if you do think it is overwhelming, we do have several blog posts about the advanced search. So you can look at that and find out kind of some other things that you can look for that maybe you hadn't realized.
Yeah, it's definitely worth, just when you have a minute, looking through the list of all the options, just so you know what's there. I think every day someone requests a feature that we have, and I'm like, oh, so I point it out, and it's obviously I'm not surprised. It's really easy to miss because there's so many options, but just taking a minute to look at what they are, I think would people would be surprised how much is in there.
And I think too, people often come to me and say, I'm sorry that I don't put my stash in Ravelry, and it's like, that's okay. We don't require that you use every part of Ravelry all the time. We're not checking off and making sure you're using Ravelry correctly. Whatever you find useful on Ravelry is great to us. So if you use it just for the search, that's great. If you like to keep track of your projects and your yarns, that's wonderful. There's no one way to use the site.
This brings me on to my next question, because the way we use the internet and social media is just changing so rapidly. So can you summarize or what are your thoughts on how has the usage of Ravelry changed over the last 10 years, and how do you keep looking forward and trying to stay or keep relevant?
Yeah, things have changed a lot. So I think that we, now Ravelry is sort of, there's always work to do and there's so many improvements that I want to make, but it's sort of fully formed at this point where, the tools that we offer to people are things that, that we're committed to sort of preserving and improving. So, I look at the organizational aspect, the notebook in Ravelry, where you organize your projects in your stash and your favorites in your queue and all that. And I feel like that's something that we're improving and working on for the people that like it. So, we're not trying to come up with a new, way of sharing that's easier or more like clicking a button or more like Instagram or anything like that. Those are not the sorts of things that we're interested in. So, even though we're seeing less people that want to put the time into entering a whole project into a website like Ravelry, which it's a lot of information, right? Even though we're seeing less people that want to spend time doing that, we're still sort of committed to providing those tools.
Because people like me, I like keeping track of that information, and we want to keep that around for the people that use it. But I do think, even though there are lots of ways to share the things that you're making now via Instagram and Facebook, we are not in a business to compete with an Instagram or Facebook. That is just not something we're interested or able to do as a small company. But we do hope that the database of yarns and patterns is something that will continue to be helpful to people going, into the future. It's really hard to tell, how things will go with technology. I am not in the business of guessing where that will be, but I do hope that people do keep finding the database useful, and we'll keep using it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of now I look at those aspects of Ravelry as being almost separate. The yarn and pattern databases don't need the rest of Ravelry to exist. And if for example in the future, the majority of people were sharing their knitting and crochet projects somewhere else, that we would still want to provide that data with links to wherever the somewhere else is. So that I feel like the social aspect of Ravelry and the organizational tools and then the pattern and yarn databases are like three separate things that we sort of maintain and that are all, equally important. I'm actually surprised that, 11 years now have passed and there aren't other places like Ravelry, like competing with Ravelry or connecting to Ravelry. And it's a little disappointing, and I hope that, in the future we'll have more of a ecosystem of sort of yarn related, technology projects, but.
Yeah, but I think it's still, I think part of that, a lot of people share their projects on Instagram, and you can't really share information on Instagram anywhere. Like, they don't allow that the way that it's set up. So
yeah, it is tough.
We'll just see what happens in the future. But
the database is extremely important, and I think that is what's been so useful to so many knitters and small businesses. But we have to move on. But I've just got one last question, and that is, you have built this web platform that is used by over 6 million people, and that is an extraordinary achievement. So what's it been like? What's the experience been like for you both personally?
I mean, at the beginning it was, it went from exciting to a lot of, what have we done, I think. The first, it consumed our lives for, I don't know, the first 4 years. I remember being in my house during the summer and missing a whole summer, missing the sun for a whole summer, which, we really try to enjoy in New England because there isn't a lot of it. And that went on for a few, it definitely felt like I was getting worried about, was my life going to ever be normal again? But then it happened, between being able to hire people, which obviously helped a lot, and just things stabilizing more, and maybe me being better about, working less.
Having children adjust your priorities. Yeah. We had Eloise in 2011, so your life changes a lot. But I do think Ravelry has been such a great blessing to us, and we feel incredibly grateful to the entire community for helping us put this together. On a personal level, it has provided an income for our family, and it also provides an income for our employees' families, and we are employing 3 amazing strong women, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like owning a small business is still, invades your life every day, but it's, it's something sustainable now. And I don't feel like we're burned out all the time. And it's fun to go into work, and people in Ravelry are great. I go in and I work on things, improve things, add new stuff, and people are always writing me nice notes. They have lots of feedback. It's a really, it's really rewarding for me, as opposed to other jobs I could have where the work I do one day, people can use the next day and they'll talk to me about it. And I don't know, it's nice.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've done, because you have enabled so many people through being there, doing your work. It's a combination of being at the right time, having the perfect skill sets, and then having the personality to be able to cope with the growth of this community and to deal very well with the community. So all of your skills together have just, done something really amazing. So thanks so much for joining us on the podcast and talking a little bit about the behind the scenes, how it all happened, and sharing a bit of your life with us. So we really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll say goodbye to the audience. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.